Day 10. Resolve. Unay hated it when the hunters came back to the gathering. The gathering was the name the tribe had given to the collection of cave mouths and temporary wooden and skin structures where they lived. It was a very old name, from the beginning. The elders shared stories and argued theories about when the beginning was and what it was. Unay's grandfather was convinced the caves had been bored out by the tusks of a giant mammoth, which had also stamped huge footprints that filled to become lakes and shook off great lumps of fur, which landed and grew as the forests. Others had more celestial ideas, that the waters reflected the night sky because they were made of the same things, rained down eons ago, and the caves were where some had landed. Unay loved to hear these stories and retold them to himself as he fell asleep at night. But he hated it when the hunters came back from a trip. Every few days, Unay's uncles and older cousins, two of whom, Ela and Iru, were women, would head off from the gathering with spears and clubs, coils of tree strips twisted into rope, fruits wrapped in leaves. And then, a day or two or three later, they would come back, elated with dripping hunks of flesh balanced on their heads or slung between poles carried by two, or dejected and empty-handed. Either way, whenever they first laid eyes on Unay, they didn't try to hide their contempt. Unay was 14 summers, but didn't look like it, didn't feel like it. His legs were long, but his shoulders were narrow, his chest like a bird's. He couldn't understand how others lifted as much as they did, much less run across rocky ground while they did it. He had never seen a live mammoth, never seen a whole one either. There were paintings in the caves, but the pieces that came back to the gathering were so big, he couldn't comprehend how they all went together to make one animal. The idea was terrifying. But he was 14 summers. Many of the tribe went out on hunts younger. There were some cousins, at only 8 or 9, that were already desperate to go, only stopped by a mother's scowl or a clap across the back of the head. Unay's reluctance, therefore, was all the more pronounced. If his father was still alive, he told himself, it would have been easier. Almost all followed their father out the first time, or, as would be the case for Ela's son when he came of age, their mother. But for Unay, he would have to ask an uncle, and so much time had passed, it was getting harder and harder to do. Next time, he thought, I must. Next time came around much quicker than he expected. The previous hunt had been successful, but not so successful. The usual storytelling on their return was of cornering a calf, distracting the mother, and returning with the whole carcass for once, but not enough for everyone for very long. The sun was setting, and as Uncle Uda lay propped up on one elbow, scratching his beard and chewing on a grass stem, he craned his neck around to some of the other hunters, getting their opinion on heading off again the next morning. Unay felt sick as they generally murmured their assent. So, tomorrow it was. Except, tomorrow it wasn't. Unay barely slept, and as the sky started to turn purple, he pretended to be asleep, as those who were leaving gathered their things and left. Through pinched eyelids, Unay thought he could make out a single figure standing at the very edge of the gathering, looking back at the tribe. Unay almost threw off his hide cover and ran to catch up, but before he could bring himself to it, the figure had disappeared. When the group returned, they had nothing and were particularly angry. Unay stayed out of the way, and when what was left of the small calf from the previous hunt was being prepared, he stayed in the wood on the edge of the gathering, choosing to go hungry rather than face them again. No one came to look for him. The next time, he was ready. He had tried and failed several times to ask his uncle around the fire the night before. There never seemed to be a good moment, and Unay worried it meant the same thing would happen again at sunrise. But he had got up to pee 7 or 8 times during the night, and as the light of dawn appeared, he was standing outside his uncle's cave before anyone else was up. He hoped he was shivering because of the cold. His uncle appeared. "Uncle, I would..." Uncle Uda thrust a spear pole into Unay's hand by way of response. It was so smooth and heavy. As he wondered how he would carry such a thing, one of his cousins dropped a bundle of animal skins onto Unay's shoulder and he nearly fell over. He felt his throat rising, but so was his resolve. The march from the gathering was harrowing. Even when going downhill, Unay slowed with each step, and they seemed to go uphill even more, his bare feet crushed down into every half puddle and stabbed and scratched by rubble and scree. By the time the sun was fully in the sky, both skins and spear had been taken from him by sullen comrades, sick as they were at having to stop and wait so often. Unay felt worthless. He was bent double just holding a spear, so how could he ever throw one or force it through the skin of one of those animals? One of those animals was on the other side of a large bush next to Unay. In their haste, the group had marched straight past and not seen it. But it had seen them, and its eyes widened. Unay froze, and the beast took in a beast-sized breath. Somehow, Unay knew it was about to charge, straight at the back of the group further ahead in the clearing. "Awoo!" came a call. Unay was shocked to realise that it came from him. The group spun on their heels. The hairy monster turned its huge head just as quickly. Unay burst left, away from it. "No!" cried Uncle Uda. Uda lost his brother the same day Unay lost his father, when he too had tried to outrun a mammoth. But Unay wasn't thinking about that. He was following a small ridge, climbing up, the trees leaning away on each side, looking down their respective slopes. Unay's long legs seemed to get even longer, burned pleasingly, as he heard the hulking mass bashing the smaller trees aside behind him, huffing and snorting, furious at the little monkey escaping him. Up they climbed. The trees thinned and the mammoth sounded closer. Down to his right, he could see one or two of the group, heard them shouting, whooping, the occasional swish of an optimistic spear landing in the scrub behind him. The animal was close now. Unay could almost feel its breath, smell it. The ridge had widened, the trees almost gone, along with the hindrance to the mammoth. Ahead was sky, and no sign of how steep the drop ahead was going to be. Unay considered the jump. Perhaps he could slide down the imagined slope on the other side. As long as he was faster than his pursuer, the worst might only be some scrapes. But the last time he had glanced at his uncle at the bottom of the valley, he was like a mouse down there, and Unay and his mammoth were certainly even higher now. Unay felt a stone, kicked up by the beast, bounce off the back of his leg. The world slowed. A thin branch pointed at him from the last tree on the ridge edge. It was thin, but thicker not much further up. What a strange thing to notice, thought Unay, as he leapt into the air. A surge of joy passed through him as his fingers closed around that beautiful branch. A wet, warm trunk slapped his ankle as the mammoth ran straight beneath him, straight ahead, and off the cliff. There was a squeal, a thud, another thud that sounded much further away, and then cheering. As Unay bobbed on his tree branch like an apple, breathing heavily, he could hear his uncle's voice, pushed to breaking over those of the others, laughing, whooping, crying, and Unay wondered how much he was going to have to carry home.